Hey there, welcome. You found your way to a cozy corner of the internet where stories unfold slowly, gently, just enough to let your mind wander and drift. For the next hour, I'll be reading a collection of Reddit stories. Real, raw, sometimes funny, sometimes emotional, but always soothing. There's nothing you need to do right now, no decisions to make, no tasks to finish. Just settle in, close your eyes if you'd like, and let these stories carry you into sleep. Or at least a peaceful state of rest. So take a deep breath and let's begin. Am I the a-hole for kicking my house guests out 11 hours before their flight is scheduled to leave? On my 30th, I'm having a tough time right now because I'm really torn about a situation that happened recently with my house guests. A little background. I live in a small, cozy apartment in the city. I don't host guests often, but I do my best to be accommodating when I do. I also value my personal space, so I'm pretty protective of it. A few weeks ago, my best friend Emily, 29F, and her boyfriend Jake, 32M, came to visit for a long weekend. They live a few hours away, so I was excited to have them over, especially since we hadn't seen each other in a while. Emily and I go way back. We've been close since high school, and she's always been one of my favorite people to hang out with. However, things didn't go as smoothly as I had hoped. The first couple of days were fine. We spent some time sightseeing, caught up on old times, and I cooked a couple of meals for them. But by the third day of their visit, I started to notice that things were feeling off. They were both getting a little too comfortable in my space, leaving their stuff everywhere, and generally being pretty inconsiderate. For example, they would leave dirty dishes in the living room and not clean up after themselves. I've never been the kind of person to micromanage, but after a couple of days, it started to bother me. I tried to brush it off, but it was becoming hard to ignore. Things came to a head on the morning of their last day, which was supposed to be their last day before their evening flight back home. They had already been staying at my place for 4 days, and I was feeling exhausted. I've been working from home recently, and it was really hard to concentrate with them lounging around all day, chatting loudly, and having the TV on at full volume. I had tried to set boundaries earlier, like asking them to clean up after themselves or not making a mess in the shared spaces, but it didn't seem to make a difference. I was starting to feel overwhelmed. That morning, I had to get a lot of work done, and I was also really looking forward to some peace and quiet. I told them both that I needed to focus and that I wouldn't be available to hang out for a while. I thought they'd understand, but instead, they were both quite offended. Emily mentioned how they'd be leaving that evening anyway, so it wasn't a big deal if they just hung out and killed sometime before their flight. At that point, I snapped. I asked them both to leave, telling them that I didn't feel comfortable with them staying any longer and that I needed my space. I told them that it was 11 hours before their flight, and while I understood that it was inconvenient, I just couldn't deal with them being there any longer. I offered to help them figure out another place to hang out, or even suggested a nearby cafe where they could kill time until their flight. Emily and Jake were absolutely shocked. Emily started crying, saying she couldn't believe I was kicking them out after everything, and Jake got really defensive, saying it was rude and disrespectful. I told them I wasn't trying to be mean, but I needed some time to myself. They left in a huff, and I haven't heard from either of them since. I feel guilty, because I know it wasn't the most considerate thing to do, but at the same time I was really at my breaking point. Since then, I've had a lot of people tell me that I overreacted. They say I should have let them stay a few more hours, especially since their flight wasn't until the evening. Some people think I should have just sucked it up and pushed through, but I honestly feel like I did the right thing for my own mental health. I tried to be patient, and I tried to set boundaries, but it felt like they were ignoring my needs. So, am I the a-hole for kicking my house guests out 11 hours before their flight is scheduled to leave? Should I have just tolerated a little longer, or was my need for space more important? Am I the a-hole for never mentioning to my GF that my teeth are not real? Okay, so this is kind of a weird one, and I'm not sure if I'm overthinking things or if I'm in the wrong. I, 30, may have been dating my girlfriend, 28F, for about 2 years now. We've had a really strong relationship and things are going great overall. We've talked about a lot of things, shared stories, gone through some personal struggles together, and our relationship feels really solid. Now here's the thing I've never told her. My teeth are not real. Well, to clarify, they're not natural. I have implants. I've had them for about 10 years now, and I'm super self-conscious about them. I'm going to explain why, but before I do, I just want to say that it wasn't something I ever planned to hide forever. When I was 20, I had a major dental issue due to a combination of genetics and some trauma I sustained when I was younger. To make a long story short, my natural teeth were really bad, and after years of treatments and various dental work, I ended up getting implants. The whole process was really tough on me, and I went through a lot of insecurities about how I looked and how people would perceive me. Over time, though, I got used to them, and they're basically just a part of me now. They look pretty natural at this point, and no one really knows unless I bring it up. I've always been pretty private about it because I never wanted it to be something people would judge me for. I've never had issues with them functionally, and they don't cause me any pain, but I still feel kind of embarrassed about the fact that they're not my real teeth. Anyway, my girlfriend and I have gotten pretty serious, and we've talked about a lot of personal things. We are comfortable with each other, but the topic of my teeth has never really come up. I've always brushed it off if the subject of dental work or cosmetic procedures came up. I didn't want to make it an issue, and I figured it wasn't really important for her to know since everything is fine with them now. I'm not sure if I'm afraid of her thinking differently of me, or if I just didn't want it to feel like I was defective. I know that sounds dumb, but it's a part of me that I've struggled with for a long time. Recently we were at dinner with some of her friends, and one of them asked me about my dental work. I could tell my girlfriend was a little surprised when the question came up, and she looked at me like she was waiting for me to answer. In that moment, I just froze. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to explain everything, but I was afraid that once it was out in the open, it would change the way they looked at me, or worse, how she looked at me. So, I just gave a vague answer and changed the subject. She didn't press the issue, but I could tell she was a little confused by my reaction. Later that night, when we were alone, she asked me why I'd avoided the topic and seemed so uncomfortable. She said it seemed like I was hiding something, and it made her feel a little weird. I didn't know how to respond, so I just told her it wasn't a big deal and dropped it. She seemed a little frustrated, but she didn't push further. Here's where I'm stuck. I know I should have probably been more upfront with her about my dental history, but I just never felt like it was something worth mentioning. Now, I'm worried that by not telling her sooner, I might have betrayed her trust, and I feel like I've created an unnecessary issue. At the same time, I don't want her to see me differently or feel like I'm hiding something important. We've always had such a great relationship, and I feel like I've put a wall up over something that's been a huge insecurity for me, so, dread it? Am I the a-hole for never mentioning to my girlfriend that my teeth aren't real? Should I have just told her earlier, or am I right to have kept it to myself? Am I the a-hole for not letting my co-worker stay at my place even though I have the space? I, 29F, recently had a situation with a co-worker, 32F, that's been bothering me, and I'm honestly not sure if I was in the wrong. I want to give some background so you can understand where I'm coming from, but I'll try to keep it concise. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment by myself. I have a guest bedroom that's mostly used for storage, but I occasionally have friends or family stay over when they visit. It's a comfortable space, and I don't mind hosting people I'm close to, as long as they're respectful of my time and space. I've been working with Rachel, my co-worker, for about a year now. We've become friendly at work, but we're not super close outside of the office. We talk a bit, grab lunch sometimes, but that's pretty much the extent of it. Recently, she mentioned that she was having some issues with her roommate and was looking for a temporary place to stay. She said it was just for a week or two, and since she knew I had a spare room, she jokingly asked if she could crash at my place. I was caught off guard. I'm all for helping people out, but I don't know Rachel that well, and the idea of having a co-worker stay at my home, especially for a week or two, didn't sit right with me. I explained to her that I do have space, but I wasn't really comfortable with the idea of hosting someone I'm not super close with for an extended period of time. She seemed a little surprised by my response, but I tried to be polite about it. I said, "I'm really sorry, but I don't usually let people stay at my place unless I'm very close with them. I hope you understand." Rachel's expression shifted, and she seemed a little taken aback, but she just said, "Okay, no worries. I get it." Since then, things have been a little awkward at work. I feel like she's been acting distant and maybe a bit annoyed with me. She's still polite, but there's a noticeable change in the dynamic between us. I'm starting to feel guilty, but at the same time I feel like I was just being honest about my boundaries. A few of our other co-workers found out about the situation, and some of them have been telling me that I was too harsh, and that it would have been a kind gesture to help her out, especially since I have the space. But I just don't feel comfortable with the idea of having someone I don't know that well staying in my home for an extended period of time. It's not about not wanting to help, but more about maintaining my personal boundaries. So, am I the a-hole for not letting my co-worker stay at my place even though I have the space? Should I have made an exception and offered her a place to stay, or was I right to stand firm in my decision? Am I the a-hole for telling my dad's wife I'm sorry but she's not my mum? I, 21F, am currently in a pretty awkward situation with my dad's wife, and I'm honestly not sure if I went too far. To give some context, my parents divorced when I was 14, and it was a pretty tough time for me. My mum was always the one who took care of everything. She was the rock of the family. My dad, on the other hand, was more distant after the divorce. It felt like he didn't know how to handle me, and I think he struggled with the separation too. About 3 years after the divorce, my dad started dating someone, and eventually they got married. Her name is Linda, 38F, and she's a nice enough person. We don't have a terrible relationship, but it's not exactly great either. I wouldn't call her a stepmom because I've never felt close enough to her for that title. I've always referred to her by her first name, and she's never pushed me to call her anything else. But she's made it clear over the years that she wants to have a more significant role in my life, like being a mother figure. And while I understand that, I've never really accepted it. Lately, Linda has been making more comments about being there for me and helping me with things like a mom would. I get it. She probably wants to form a bond, but it's been rubbing me the wrong way. My real mom passed away when I was 18, and it was a devastating loss for me. While I'm grateful that Linda has been kind to my dad and supportive in her own way, I've never seen her as a replacement for my mom. The whole mother figure thing just feels uncomfortable, especially since I never asked for it. It all came to a head last weekend. My dad, Linda, and I were having dinner at their house, and we were talking about some old family photos. Linda made a comment about how she was the mom in those pictures, and how she was glad that I had her to help guide me through life. She even made a joke about how, now that I'm older, she's the one who's going to be there for me like a mom should be. I don't know what came over me, but in that moment, I just snapped. I looked at her and said, "I'm sorry, but you're not my mom. You're my dad's wife, and I appreciate everything you've done, but I've already lost my mom and I don't need a replacement." The room went silent. My dad was visibly upset, and Linda looked like I slapped her. She tried to act like it didn't hurt, but I could tell it did. She said something like, "I was just trying to be supportive," but I could tell she was really taken aback by how blunt I was. After that, the mood at dinner was super awkward, and I left early because I couldn't stand the tension. Since then, Linda has been texting me, apologizing if I felt hurt, but also saying she's just trying to love me and be there for me. She even told me that I hurt her feelings and made her feel like she's not important. My dad called me later to tell me I shouldn't have said it like that and that I should have been more understanding. He said that while he gets I'm still grieving my mum, Linda is trying to be a part of my life and I shouldn't push her away. I'm torn. On one hand, I know I've been blunt, and maybe I could have handled it better. But on the other hand, I don't want to pretend Linda is something she's not, and I really don't want her to replace my mum. It feels like she's trying too hard to step into a role I'm just not comfortable with. I still miss my mum every day, and it hurts when people try to take her place even if they have good intentions. So, am I the a-hole for telling my dad's wife I'm sorry, but she's not my mum? Should I have said it differently, or was I right to set that boundary? Am I the a-hole for laughing at my stepson and ruining his wedding? I, 45 Mim, am in a bit of a complicated situation with my stepson, and it all came to a head during his wedding, which I feel awful about. I've been married to my wife, 42F, for 8 years, and she has a son, Daniel, 28M, from her first marriage. Daniel and I have never had the best relationship, but we've gotten along well enough. Over the years, I've tried to be there for him, but he's always been a bit distant and sometimes downright rude to me. A little background. Daniel is a great guy in many ways. He's hard-working, smart, and ambitious, but he's always had a very strong sense of pride about being the man of the house when his mother and I started dating. He doesn't like being overshadowed by me, and he's made that pretty clear throughout the years, often taking subtle digs at me or making snide comments about how I wasn't his real dad. The tension has always been there, but I've tried to bite my tongue. I've tried to make the best of it for the sake of my wife, who has always insisted that I should just be patient with him and that he'd come around eventually. But honestly, I've never felt like he respected me, and it's been a difficult dynamic for me. Now to get to the wedding. The wedding itself was beautiful. It was held at a lovely venue, and everyone was in good spirits. I've known for a while that Daniel had some very specific ideas about what he wanted for his big day, and it was clear from the moment I stepped in that the day was meant to reflect his style and vision. It wasn't the traditional wedding I was expecting, but I didn't mind. His fiancée, Emma, is a lovely woman, and they make a great couple. But there was one thing I didn't expect. During the reception, Daniel got up to give a speech, and he started talking about how important family was to him, how much his mother meant to him, and how he felt like he was finally becoming the man he wanted to be. It was actually a nice speech at first, but then he started talking about how, now that he's getting married, he's officially the man of his own house, and that he was no longer the child, but a man who would take charge of his own future. He went on and on about how he was the one who had to step up in the family, and that he was proud to finally be able to make his own decisions. It was at this point that my wife, Emma, looked at me with a pained expression, and I could tell that the speech was starting to rub her the wrong way as well. But here's where I messed up. As Daniel said the part about taking charge and being the man of the house, I couldn't help but laugh. It wasn't a loud, mocking laugh, but it was a laugh nonetheless. And honestly, I think it was because, in that moment, it felt like a ridiculous statement. It wasn't the right time for humor, and I knew it, but it just struck me as so over-the-top and pompous that I couldn't hold it in. The room went dead silent, and everyone turned to look at me. My wife's face dropped, and Daniel's face turned bright red. He was furious. He stopped his speech and glared at me, and I could see the tension building. After a long, uncomfortable pause, he stormed off the stage and left the reception. I was in shock, and so was everyone else. My wife tried to smooth things over, but the damage was done. After that, things got awkward. The rest of the evening was tense, and Daniel didn't come back to the reception. Emma and I ended up leaving early, and she was upset with me the whole way home. She told me that I had ruined the most important day of Daniel's life, and that I had completely embarrassed him in front of everyone. I told her that I didn't mean any harm, but she said that the timing and my reaction were completely inappropriate. Now I feel like I've messed up big time. Daniel hasn't spoken to me much since the wedding, and Emma is still really upset. I get that my laugh wasn't the right response, but I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. I just thought his speech was a bit much, and I honestly didn't expect to react that way. I've apologized to Emma, but I haven't reached out to Daniel yet because I don't even know what to say. So, am I the a-hole for laughing at my stepson and ruining his wedding? Was my reaction out of line, or is it understandable given the situation? Am I the a-hole for not covering my friend's meal when she ordered more? I, 26F, recently had a situation with my friend Laura, 25F, that I'm still not sure how to feel about. We've been friends for a few years, and while we've had our ups and downs, we generally get along really well. We both like to go out to eat, and we usually split the bill when we go to restaurants. A few days ago, we decided to grab dinner at a nice restaurant. It was one of those places that's a bit more expensive, but we had both been looking forward to it. We ordered our meals and started chatting. The food was delicious, and we were having a great time. However, about halfway through the meal, Laura decided she wanted to order something else. Dessert, a couple of extra appetizers, and a drink. It wasn't like she was ordering just one thing either. She kept adding to the order, and by the end of it, she had quite a bit more food than I had planned for. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured it was a little indulgent, but she's an adult and can order whatever she wants, right? However, when the bill came, I noticed that my meal was only a fraction of what she had ordered. The total bill was about $120, and I'd only had a main course and a drink, so I thought it was fair to split the bill evenly, as we usually do. But when the waiter came with the check, Laura immediately said, "Oh, you can just cover my half, right? I'm kind of low on cash this month." This wasn't the first time Laura had asked me to cover for her. She has a habit of not budgeting properly, and it's always me who ends up covering her share when we eat out. I've never minded helping her out here and there, but this time it felt different. She had ordered a significant amount more than me, and it was clear that I was paying for most of her meal. I also knew she had been working recently, and didn't seem to have any major financial problems. She had just decided to splurge that night. I hesitated for a second, and then said, "Laura, I'm happy to help sometimes. But you ordered way more than I did. It doesn't seem fair for me to cover the whole meal this time." She seemed shocked and said, "But we always split the bill, and I really don't have enough to cover mine. You're my friend. You know I'd do the same for you." I told her I understood, but that it wasn't really fair to ask me to pay for the extra stuff she ordered when I hadn't ordered nearly as much. I offered to pay for my share, but she seemed upset, and we ended up in an awkward silence. In the end, I paid for my half of the bill, and she covered the rest, but it felt really uncomfortable. Afterward, she texted me saying she was hurt by my response and that it made her feel like I didn't care about her. She also said that I've been acting different lately, and that I should have just helped her out this time. I feel like I was justified in not covering her meal, but now I'm second-guessing myself because of how upset she was. So Hi the a-hole for not covering my friend's meal when she ordered more? Should I have just paid it, or was I right to stand my ground? Am I the a-hole for telling my brother-in-law to stop picking on my kids, or he's not coming on vacation? I, 35F, have a situation that I'm still trying to figure out whether I handled well or not. I have 2 kids, a 7-year-old daughter, Lily, and a 5-year-old son, Max. My husband, 37M, and I have always made sure to take family vacations to spend quality time together, and this year we planned a trip to the beach. We invited my husband's family to join us, including his younger brother, Jake, 2090, who has always been a bit of a wild card. Jake is the type of guy who jokes around a lot, sometimes to the point where it goes too far, and while he's generally a good guy, he tends to get under my skin when it comes to how he interacts with my kids. The thing is, he doesn't have any kids of his own, so he might not fully get how to treat kids with respect, or he just doesn't care. Over the past few months, Jake has made several comments to my kids, often poking fun at them or making sarcastic remarks. Some of it is just typical teasing, but it's been bothering me more and more. For example, he once called Max a crybaby when he got upset about something small, and when Lily spilled a drink at dinner, Jake said she was clumsy, and made some snide comment about her lack of coordination. While my kids are generally tough, I don't want them to feel like they're being picked on by an adult, especially their uncle. I've tried addressing it subtly a few times by asking Jake to be a little nicer, but he brushes it off, claiming it's just harmless teasing. I've explained to him that my kids don't always understand the tone, and they don't like being made fun of. He'd apologize half-heartedly and then do it again the next time. Fast forward to a week before our vacation, and Jake started ramping up the teasing again. He was constantly making little jabs at Lily's appearance, calling her a mini diva for wanting to wear a sparkly dress to a family dinner, and Max's hobbies, mocking him for liking to play with toy trucks instead of sports. It was starting to get on my nerves, and my husband wasn't really doing anything about it, so I decided to speak up. The day I told Jake about it, we were all sitting together talking about the upcoming vacation, and I said, "Jake, I need to talk to you about something. If you keep picking on my kids, I'm going to have to ask you not to come on the vacation with us. They're getting really upset by your comments, and it's affecting the atmosphere I want to create for this trip. I want everyone to enjoy themselves, but I won't tolerate my kids being made fun of, especially by an adult." Jake seemed stunned and immediately got defensive. He said, "Come on, it's just joking around. They need to toughen up." I told him that I understood he wasn't trying to be malicious, but that it was still bothering my kids, and it wasn't funny anymore. He looked a little hurt, but he didn't apologize, and the conversation ended kind of awkwardly. Since then, there's been some tension. Jake keeps texting my husband about it, saying I'm overreacting and that I'm being too sensitive. He's even said he's reconsidering whether he should come on the vacation at all if I'm going to be this strict. My husband says he gets where I'm coming from, but he also feels like I should have handled it more casually, like just telling Jake to stop without making it into such a big issue. A few of my friends have said I was in the right to stand up for my kids and set boundaries, but a couple of others think I might have been too harsh by threatening to uninvite him. I've been feeling bad about it, but at the same time, I really don't think I'm wrong for protecting my kids' feelings. So, am I the a-hole for telling my brother-in-law to stop picking on my kids or he's not coming on vacation? Should I have handled it differently? Or was I right to set a clear boundary? Am I the a-hole for telling my mom she can bill me using the tuition money she stole from me? I, 22 mess, am currently in my final year of college, and I'm dealing with something that's really been bothering me, and I'm not sure if I'm being unreasonable about it. To give some background, my parents, Mom especially, have always been a little controlling with money. I come from a middle-class family, but my mom always had this habit of spending a lot more than we should have, often charging things to credit cards and making promises to pay it off later. The one thing that I always thought was set in stone, though, was that the money saved for my tuition would go toward my college expenses. Let me explain what happened. When I started college, my mom told me that she had set up a savings account for my tuition, and she'd been putting money aside for years to ensure that I would be able to attend without taking out massive student loans. She told me she was handling the savings account, and I trusted her completely. As the years went on, I would check in every now and then, asking if everything was on track. She always reassured me that the money was there, that I didn't need to worry, and that I'd be able to go through school without a huge debt burden. Fast forward to last semester. I had everything lined up, classes, housing, all of it, until I went to pay the tuition bill. When I went to access the account to pay the balance, I found out that there was no money in it. I mean, literally nothing. I was panicked, and my first instinct was to ask my mom what was going on. She admitted that she had used the money, not for anything that had to do with my education, not for anything that was important at all. She had used the money for personal expenses, shopping, vacations, and even some investments in things that weren't exactly reliable. She had basically drained the account over time, and I had no idea. When I asked her why she didn't tell me, or at least let me know that the money wasn't there, she just shrugged and said that things were tight and she didn't want me to worry. At that moment, I was devastated. I didn't know how to react. My mom, who I thought I could trust with something as important as my future, had stolen from me, and now I was stuck trying to figure out how to pay for school. I had to take out loans and borrow money from family to make sure I could continue my education. I also felt betrayed by the fact that she had used this money for herself and didn't care about how it would impact my future. Here's where I feel like I might be in the wrong. After everything happened, I was really upset. I tried to have a calm conversation with her about it, but she kept brushing it off. She didn't apologize, and in fact, she told me that I was being too dramatic about it. So, in a moment of frustration, I told her, "Well, you can just bill me using the money you stole from me." I know that sounds harsh, but I felt so powerless and hurt by her actions. I was angry and it just came out. After I said that, my mom got furious. She said I was being disrespectful and that I had no idea how hard things had been for her. She claimed that I should be more understanding because she did the best she could. She also said I should be grateful that she even put money aside in the first place, and now I'm just throwing it all in her face. I honestly don't think I was throwing it in her face, though. I was just so hurt, and it felt like the only way to express how betrayed I felt. Now I'm wondering if I crossed a line. I understand that my mom may have had her own struggles, and I don't want to minimize her challenges, but at the same time, I feel like what she did was incredibly selfish and unfair to me. I don't feel like I'm being unreasonable by being upset, but she seems to think I should just forgive her because she's my mom. So, am I the a-hole for telling my mom she can bill me using the tuition money she stole from me? Was I too harsh in my response, or was I justified in how I reacted? Am I the a-hole for calling my husband a disgrace after he said my miscarriage ruined his birthday? Or 30F. I'm currently dealing with a situation that has left me emotionally drained and questioning whether or not I was too harsh in my response. I had a miscarriage about a month ago. It was incredibly hard for me emotionally and physically. My husband, 32M, and I had been trying for a baby for a while, and we were both really excited when I got pregnant. When the miscarriage happened, it felt like everything I'd been hoping for was ripped away in an instant. I went through a lot of grief, and so did my husband, but in a different way. He was obviously sad, but it seemed like he was more focused on how it affected him than how it was affecting me. I understood that he was upset, but I felt like I needed a lot of support and understanding from him during this time. Fast forward to a few weeks later, my husband's birthday was coming up. I knew it was a big deal to him, and I wanted to make sure that despite everything, he still had a good celebration. We didn't have a big party or anything, but I did plan a quiet evening with a nice dinner and a gift. I wanted to show him that even though we had gone through a tough time, I still cared about him and wanted to make sure he felt loved. The day of his birthday, I woke up feeling a bit off, emotionally drained from everything I'd been through, with the miscarriage. I wasn't in the mood for a party, and I didn't feel like celebrating, but I knew it was important to him. I did my best to push my feelings aside and focus on making the day special for him. However, when I tried to bring up how I was feeling and how I was still mourning the loss, he got visibly upset. He told me in a very blunt tone that he couldn't believe I was ruining his birthday by being mopey and not getting over it. He said that he understood I was grieving, but that it had been weeks and that it was time to move on. I was shocked. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He actually said that my miscarriage had ruined his birthday. It felt so unbelievably selfish, and I was completely crushed by his words. I snapped at him and told him he was a disgrace. I told him that his birthday was the least of my concerns after everything I had been through. I said that I had been trying so hard to hold myself together for him, but it seemed like he didn't care about how I was feeling at all. I told him that if he was going to act like this, then he wasn't the person I thought he was, and that I didn't want to spend the day celebrating with someone who could be so insensitive to what I was going through. He got really defensive and said that I was overreacting and that I had no sense of humor or perspective. We ended up arguing for a while, and the entire day was ruined. In the end, he stormed off to his friend's house to blow off some steam, and I spent the evening crying. Now I'm feeling conflicted. I know I was hurt by what he said, and in the heat of the moment, I said things that I probably shouldn't have, but at the same time, I feel like he showed such a lack of empathy toward me in one of the hardest moments of my life. I understand that he was upset, but telling me that my miscarriage ruined his birthday just feels like something I can't forgive so easily. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for calling my husband a disgrace after he said my miscarriage ruined his birthday? Was I too harsh, or did I have a right to react the way I did? Am I the a-hole for telling my mom I'll never forgive her if she fucks up my adoption? I, 26F, have been in the process of adopting a child for the past year. This has been something I've wanted for a long time, and after years of trying to get my life together, I finally feel like I'm ready to be a mother. I've been working with an adoption agency, and the process has been both exciting and nerve-wracking. I've jumped through all the hoops, taken all the required classes, and gone through rigorous background checks. Now I'm just waiting for the right match to come through, and I can't wait to start my new life with a child of my own. My mom, 50s, has been supportive of my decision to adopt, or at least, that's what I thought. She's always been a bit opinionated and overbearing, but I've tried to respect her advice throughout my life. However, she has a history of overstepping her boundaries in the past, especially when it comes to family matters, and I'm afraid this is going to happen again with the adoption. Recently, I found out that my mom has been talking to my adoption agency behind my back. She's been trying to help by pushing her own ideas and opinions on the adoption process, even though I've made it clear that I want to do this on my own terms. She's been calling the agency regularly, asking about the progress of the adoption, and even offering to take over some of the paperwork, which is completely unnecessary. The last straw came when I found out she had contacted the agency directly and made an appointment for us to meet with a potential birth mother without consulting me first. This was a big deal because the agency had not yet matched me with anyone, and it was too early for this kind of meeting. I understand she's excited about becoming a grandmother, but this was crossing a line. When I confronted her about it, she got defensive and claimed she was just trying to help. She told me that she had a lot of experience with kids. I have 2 younger siblings, and she just wanted to make sure everything went smoothly for me. She said she was just being supportive and wanted to be involved in the process. I lost my temper at this point. I told her in no uncertain terms that if she continued to overstep and try to control this process, I would never forgive her. I told her that the adoption process was one of the most important things in my life, and I needed her to respect my boundaries. I made it clear that if she kept pushing me out of the decision-making process or trying to insert herself in ways I didn't want, I wouldn't allow her to be involved in the child's life at all. I know I was harsh, but I've been trying to keep a level head throughout this whole journey, and this felt like the final straw. She completely disregarded my wishes, and I felt like I was losing control over something that was supposed to be my own decision. The last thing I want is for my mom to ruin something that I've worked so hard for. After our conversation, she was really hurt and told me I was being too harsh. She said I was being unreasonable and that she was just trying to help. She also said she couldn't believe I would threaten to cut her out of my life over something like this. She's been giving me the cold shoulder since, and I feel awful. I know I'm not perfect, but I also don't think I'm wrong in wanting to be the one in charge of this process. Now I'm second-guessing myself. Did I go too far? Should I have been more understanding of her excitement? I don't want to cause a rift in our relationship, but at the same time I can't let her mess up the most important thing that's ever happened to me. So, am I the a-hole for telling my mom I'll never forgive her if she fucks up my adoption? Should I have handled this differently? Or was I right to draw a hard line? Am I the a-hole for demanding money back after a friend threw away most of my kitchen utensils? I, 29F, have been friends with Clara, 30F, for about 5 years now. We've always had a pretty strong friendship, though we don't see each other all that often because we live in different cities. Clara has a bit of a chaotic personality, and she's prone to impulsively doing things without fully thinking them through. I've learned to accept this, though it can sometimes cause tension. A couple of months ago I was going out of town for a work trip and decided to let Clara stay at my place while I was away. I trusted her and thought it would be a good chance for her to have some time in my city. We agreed on the details, and she moved in for about a week while I was gone. When I returned, I was in a rush, so I didn't immediately check everything in my kitchen. But the next morning I went to make breakfast and noticed that most of my kitchen utensils were missing. I mean a significant number of them: my knives, measuring cups, spatulas, wooden spoons, and even some of my favorite pots and pans. It was as if a huge chunk of my kitchen had just vanished. At first I thought I might have just misplaced them, so I searched the house, but I couldn't find them anywhere. Then I remembered that Clara had mentioned cleaning up after herself while I was gone, so I texted her and casually asked if she knew where any of my kitchen stuff had gone. She texted me back saying, "Oh, I thought they were getting too old and dirty, so I just tossed them. Sorry, I didn't think you'd mind." I was absolutely shocked. These weren't just any kitchen utensils. They were high-quality items that I had carefully collected over the years. Some of them were expensive and had sentimental value, especially the knives that my grandmother had passed down to me. I was heartbroken when I realized that Clara had just thrown them away without asking me or considering their value. I immediately confronted her about it, and she acted like it was no big deal. She said she thought she was doing me a favor by decluttering my kitchen, and that I should be grateful that she had cleaned up. I told her that I was really upset, and that I needed her to reimburse me for the items she threw away. I even sent her a list of the items and their approximate values. To my surprise, she refused. She told me that I was overreacting and that I shouldn't be so attached to material things. She said, "It's just stuff. Why are you so upset? You can always buy new ones." I explained that it wasn't just about the cost. It was about the principle. She had no right to throw away things that belonged to me without asking, especially when some of them were irreplaceable or had sentimental value. I told her that if she didn't pay me back for the items, I would have to reconsider our friendship because I felt disrespected and hurt by what she did. Clara got defensive and said I was being too dramatic and that I shouldn't be so attached to things that are just objects. She said that if I couldn't let it go, then maybe we weren't as close as I thought we were. Now I feel torn. I want to stand my ground and demand that she pay me back because I honestly don't think I'm being unreasonable. These were valuable items, and she had no right to dispose of them. But at the same time, I'm feeling guilty for putting such a heavy demand on our friendship. I'm also worried that this might cause irreparable damage between us. I've tried to think about it from Clara's perspective, but I can't shake the feeling that she violated my trust. I don't think I should just let it go because it's not just about the money. It's about the lack of respect she showed by making such a big decision without consulting me first. So, am I the a-hole for demanding money back after a friend threw away most of my kitchen utensils? Should I just drop it and move on? Or am I justified in wanting to be reimbursed for the things she threw away? Am I the a-hole for saying my boyfriend's friend can't visit us now that I'm pregnant? I, 27F, am currently 5 months pregnant with my boyfriend Mark's 29-month child. We've been together for 2.5 years, and while things have been pretty smooth, this pregnancy has brought up some tensions that I wasn't expecting. One issue in particular revolves around Mark's friend, Chris, 30M. Chris and Mark have been friends since childhood, and they've always had a pretty close relationship. Chris is someone who Mark sees as a bro, and they have a history of spending a lot of time together, watching sports, having late-night talks, going on trips, etc. I've always been pretty neutral about Chris. I've met him a few times, and while he's not my cup of tea, I never had any major issues with him. He's loud, a little reckless, and kind of a party animal, but I didn't think it was a big deal. Until now. Ever since I got pregnant, Mark has been talking about having Chris over more often. He says that Chris has been a good friend to him, and that it would be nice for us to spend time together as a group before the baby arrives. He also mentions that Chris is eager to meet the baby once he's born, and that he'll be a great uncle. Here's the problem. Chris has always been the type to get pretty drunk at parties, make inappropriate comments, and overall act immature. I've never felt completely comfortable around him, and now that I'm pregnant, I'm more sensitive to people's behavior. I just don't want someone like Chris around while I'm preparing for the baby and transitioning into this new chapter of my life. I'm trying to create a calm and supportive environment, and I just don't think Chris is someone who fits into that right now. Mark has invited Chris over multiple times in the past few weeks, and each time I've expressed my concerns. I told him that I just don't feel comfortable with Chris being around, especially considering his behavior. Mark has brushed it off, saying that Chris will tone it down because he knows I'm pregnant and that I'm overreacting. He also insists that it would be good for Chris to be around so he can get used to the idea of me being pregnant. I was starting to feel frustrated and unheard, so last night I decided to be blunt. I told Mark that I didn't want Chris visiting us at all while I'm pregnant. I explained that his behavior makes me anxious, and I'm not willing to have someone like him in my space while I'm trying to relax and get ready for the baby. I told Mark that if he wanted to spend time with Chris, he could do so elsewhere. I didn't want to be around him, especially not with all the stress of the pregnancy on top of it. Mark was really upset by this. He said that I was being controlling and that I couldn't just ban his friends from coming over, especially someone he considers family. He also accused me of overreacting and said that I was making a big deal out of nothing. He said that I should trust him to manage the situation and that he wouldn't let Chris get out of hand around me. But I told him that I simply didn't want to risk it and that I felt uncomfortable around Chris, period. Mark says I'm taking things too far and that I'm being unreasonable by not wanting Chris around just because I'm pregnant. He also said that I'm causing tension in our relationship by trying to dictate who can and can't come over. I know this has been bothering him, and I feel bad for making him feel like he has to choose between me and his friend, but I just Can't shake how uncomfortable Chris's behavior makes me. Now I'm wondering if I'm being too controlling and unreasonable about this. I want Mark to have his friendships, but I also want to feel safe and comfortable during my pregnancy. I don't want to feel like I'm being forced to tolerate someone who makes me anxious and uncomfortable. So, am I the a-hole for saying my boyfriend's friend can't visit us now that I'm pregnant? Should I have just let Mark handle it? Or was it okay for me to set this boundary? Am I the a-hole for refusing to cover my tattoos for my boyfriend's family dinner? I, 28F, have been dating my boyfriend, Jason, 30M, for about 9 months now. We've been getting serious, and recently he invited me to a family dinner at his parents' house. I've met his parents a few times before, but this would be the first time I would be meeting a larger part of his extended family. He was really excited about it, and I was excited too. It's a big step in our relationship. I have several tattoos, some large and visible, and some smaller ones on my arms and hands. Tattoos have always been a form of self-expression for me, and I'm very proud of them. I've worked in creative fields, so my tattoos are generally well received, and I don't hide them in my everyday life. However, I know that some people, especially from more conservative or traditional backgrounds, might not feel the same way about tattoos. Before the dinner, Jason brought up my tattoos and suggested that I cover them up for the evening, because he didn't want them to make his family uncomfortable. He said his parents were old-fashioned, and that his aunt and uncle in particular would probably judge me for having visible tattoos. He also mentioned that his mom is very particular about proper presentation and might not be thrilled about me showing up with my tattoos on display. I was a bit taken aback by his request. I've never had an issue with my tattoos before, and I don't feel like I should have to hide them for anyone. Jason insisted that it was just for one night, and he didn't want his family to form negative impressions of me before they got to know me better. He said he didn't want them to focus on my tattoos rather than who I am as a person. He didn't ask me to dress up or anything else, just that I wear something to cover up my tattoos for the evening. At first I thought about it. I really want to make a good impression, and I understand that sometimes people have strong opinions about tattoos, especially older generations. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt like it wasn't something I should compromise on. I've always been true to myself, and my tattoos are a big part of who I am. If his family can't accept me for who I am, tattoos and all, then I'm not sure that's something I'm willing to change for just one dinner. I told Jason that I wasn't comfortable covering my tattoos. I explained that it would feel inauthentic to me, and that I don't want to hide a part of who I am for the sake of making his family more comfortable. I told him I'd be happy to dress appropriately and behave respectfully, but that I wasn't going to cover up my tattoos. Jason didn't take this well. He was disappointed and said that I was being difficult and stubborn about something that wasn't that big of a deal. He said that if I cared about him and making a good impression on his family, I would be willing to make this small concession. He also mentioned that it wasn't about hiding my tattoos forever. It was just about the first impression and trying to avoid judgment. I still refuse to cover up my tattoos. I don't think I should have to hide them just to make someone else feel comfortable. I don't want to compromise my identity or feel like I'm pretending to be something I'm not. I'm confident in who I am, and I'm not ashamed of my tattoos. Jason ended up going to the dinner without me, and we've barely spoken since. He says he feels embarrassed by my refusal and that I ruined the opportunity for him to introduce me to his family in a way that would make them accept me. He said it felt like I was choosing my tattoos over him and his family, and I don't want to make him feel that way, but at the same time, I don't think I should have to apologize for being myself. Now I'm wondering if I was wrong. I know that relationships require compromise, but this feels like a part of me that I shouldn't have to hide just to make someone else happy. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to cover my tattoos for my boyfriend's family dinner? Should I have been more flexible, or was I right to stand my ground on this? Am I the a-hole for telling my wife she can't cook? I, 30 Almars, have been married to my wife, Emily, 29F, for just over 2 years now. We don't have kids yet, but we're planning to start a family soon. Since we got married, I've noticed some issues in our relationship, one of which has been her cooking. Now, I know cooking is an important part of daily life for many couples, and I fully expected to share the responsibilities of it with Emily. However, the thing is, Emily just can't cook. And I'm not talking about the occasional burnt meal or undercooked chicken. I'm talking about consistently making food that is, quite frankly, inedible. In the beginning, I was understanding. I thought she might just need some practice, so I'd give her tips or help her out in the kitchen when she was trying to make dinner. But as time went on, things didn't improve, and I started to get frustrated. She'd make dishes that were bland, overcooked, or just didn't taste right at all. I didn't want to hurt her feelings, so I'd try to eat it. But I was often left with stomach issues from food that was either under-seasoned or poorly prepared. I tried to tell her in a gentle way that maybe we should order takeout or I'd take over cooking for the night, but it started to feel like she was taking it personally. One night she made a homemade lasagna, and it was honestly the worst thing I've ever tasted in my life. The noodles were mushy, the sauce was watery, and the cheese didn't melt right. I tried to be polite and said it was different, but I just couldn't stomach it. I ended up throwing it away when she wasn't looking. She asked me if I liked it, and I couldn't lie. I told her the truth. I said, honestly, it wasn't good, and it's hard for me to keep eating food that doesn't taste right. That's when things really went south. She got really defensive and hurt, saying that I was being too critical and that she was doing her best. I tried to soften it by saying that I knew she was trying, but the truth was that she wasn't improving. I told her that it might be better if we stopped trying to cook meals together for a while, and that I could just take over the cooking for us. That's when I made the mistake of saying, "You just can't cook, Emily. I think it's time we face the reality that you're not good at it." That didn't go over well, to say the least. She was visibly upset, and we ended up having a huge argument. She accused me of being disrespectful and dismissive of her efforts, and that I didn't appreciate her attempts to cook for me. I told her that I did appreciate her trying, but that I was frustrated by the fact that nothing was improving despite her effort. She said that I didn't care about her feelings, and that I was just being a jerk. I tried to apologize, but the damage had already been done. Since then, she's barely cooked anything for us. She says she's too embarrassed and hurt to try, and now I feel guilty. I've taken over cooking, but I feel like I've created this rift in our relationship by telling her she can't cook. On the other hand, I feel like I've been patient for long enough and I've tried my best to avoid being harsh, but the reality is that the food was just that bad. I've been thinking a lot about this and wondering if I should have just kept my frustration to myself and let her continue making these terrible meals, or if I was justified in being honest with her. So, am I the a-hole for telling my wife she can't cook? Should I have been more gentle in my approach, or was I right to tell her how I felt? Am I the a-hole for not bringing anything to my friend's potluck after she told me not to? I, 27F, have a friend, Sarah, 28F, who I've known for years. We've always had a pretty close relationship, but lately I've been feeling like things have been a bit off. A few weeks ago, Sarah invited me to a potluck dinner she was hosting with a group of our mutual friends. I've always enjoyed potlucks and loved to contribute, but I've noticed that Sarah can sometimes be a bit controlling. When she first sent out the invite, I was excited and immediately thought about what dish I could bring. I have a few go-to recipes I like to make for these types of events, and I was looking forward to contributing. But then, about a week before the event, Sarah texted me personally and said, "Hey, I know you're excited for the potluck, but please don't bring anything. We have enough food already, and I don't want anyone to feel obligated to bring something. Just come and enjoy the night." At first, I thought it was a little weird. I've never been to a potluck where guests were specifically told not to bring food. I'm the type of person who enjoys participating in these things, and I've always liked to bring a dish as a way of contributing. But since Sarah is a close friend and seemed insistent, I figured I'd respect her wishes and just show up without bringing anything. The night of the potluck, I arrived at Sarah's place and it was clear that the event was already in full swing. People were eating, laughing, and enjoying themselves. I immediately noticed that there was quite a bit of food, but it didn't seem like there was an overwhelming amount, the kind of spread I've seen at other potlucks. People had definitely brought food, but there were also gaps, like areas where certain dishes were missing, or not enough to go around. As I mingled with other guests, a few people commented on the fact that I didn't bring anything. Some of them jokingly asked if I'd forgotten my dish, while others seemed genuinely surprised. I didn't know how to respond, so I just brushed it off and said that Sarah had told me not to bring anything. But in hindsight, I could tell that some people were a bit put off by it. Later on, as the night went on, I noticed that people seemed to be a little more focused on the fact that I didn't contribute. Sarah's tone toward me also seemed a little off. She was being polite, but I could tell she was acting differently than usual. At one point, she pulled me aside and said, "I thought I asked you not to bring anything. It's a potluck, you know, and everyone should be contributing. It feels a little strange that you didn't bring anything after I went out of my way to make sure there was enough food for everyone." I was taken aback. She seemed kind of upset, which I hadn't expected, especially after she had specifically told me not to bring anything in the first place. I tried to explain that I had followed her instructions and that I didn't want to overstep, but she didn't seem satisfied with that response. She said it just felt off, and that it made her feel like I was being difficult or didn't care enough to contribute. As the night ended, I felt like the whole thing was awkward. I didn't think I'd done anything wrong by respecting her wishes, but now I was feeling guilty about not bringing anything. When I left, I apologized to Sarah, but she didn't seem too receptive. She just said, "It's fine, but I don't get why you didn't just bring something small. It wasn't that hard." Now I'm left wondering if I was in the wrong here. I did what she asked and didn't bring anything, but it seems like that ended up causing more tension. So am I the a-hole for not bringing anything to my friend's potluck after she told me not to? Should I have gone against her wishes and brought something anyway? Or did I do the right thing by following her request? Am I the a-hole for not giving my friend one of the freebies from my skincare order? I, 25F, have a friend, Katie, 26F, who is really into skincare. We've been friends for a few years, and we often talk about beauty products, treatments, and everything skincare related. I recently placed a fairly large order from a skincare brand I've been wanting to try for a while. It was a special promotion, and for every order over a certain amount, they were giving away a free deluxe-sized skincare product. I was super excited about my order arriving because the freebie was a high-end moisturizer that I had heard great things about, and it was something I wanted to try for myself. The order came, and I opened it to find the product. It was a really nice gift. I honestly wasn't expecting to love it, but it had great reviews, and I figured it would be a nice addition to my routine. A few days later, Katie and I were hanging out, and she was talking about how much she wanted to try that exact brand. She said she had been eyeing their products for a while, but didn't want to splurge on them. During our conversation, she casually mentioned that she wished she could try the specific moisturizer from my order. I didn't think much of it at first, but she then kind of hinted that it would be amazing if I could just give her the freebie I got from my purchase, since I didn't really need it, and it was just a freebie. I didn't want to hurt her feelings, but I also felt uncomfortable with the idea of giving away the product. It was part of my order, something I was excited to try, and it was a special freebie that I wasn't expecting to get in the first place. I'm not saying I don't care about Katie, but I didn't think it was fair for me to just hand over something I was looking forward to using myself, especially since she hadn't made any effort to buy it or try it for herself. I told her that I appreciated her wanting to try it, but I was really looking forward to testing it out for myself. I said something like, "I'm really sorry, I'm excited about the moisturizer, and I want to try it for myself since I got it as part of my order. Maybe you can try it out once I've used it a few times." She seemed a bit disappointed and didn't push further, but now I feel kind of bad. She hasn't mentioned it again, but I can tell she's not exactly happy about it. I've been thinking about it, and I wonder if I overreacted. I mean, we've shared beauty products in the past, and I know it's not a huge deal in the grand scheme of things, but it felt a little weird for her to ask for something I was really excited about, and I'm honestly not sure if I should have just given it to her. Now, I'm wondering if I was too selfish or if I was right to keep the freebie for myself. Am I the a-hole for not giving my friend one of the freebies from my skincare order? Should I have been more generous, or was it okay for me to keep it for myself? Am I the a-hole for not complimenting my friend's weight loss? I, 27F, have a friend, Jess, 26F, who I've known for over 5 years. We've always been really close, and I've been there for her through a lot of ups and downs. Lately, though, things have been a bit strained, and it's been on my mind a lot. Over the past few months, Jess has been on a weight loss journey, and from what she's told me, it's been a big focus in her life. She's been working out regularly, eating differently, and she's lost quite a bit of weight. I've noticed the physical changes, and while I'm genuinely happy for her that she's feeling better about herself, I don't think I'm the type of person to make a big deal about someone's appearance. We've never really been the type to give each other compliments like that, even though we share a lot about other aspects of our lives. Anyway, last week we were hanging out, and Jess mentioned how much weight she had lost and how proud she was of herself. She even pointed out that she had gone shopping for new clothes and felt so much better in her own skin. She seemed excited and was looking for validation, but I just didn't know how to respond. I wasn't sure what the right thing to say was, especially since we don't typically comment on each other's appearance in this way. So I just said something like, "That's great, I'm glad you're feeling better about yourself." It wasn't a huge celebration of her weight loss, but I didn't think it was a bad response either. To my surprise, she looked a little disappointed and changed the subject quickly. Later, I got a text from her saying that she felt hurt, that I hadn't given her a more enthusiastic compliment about her weight loss. She said something along the lines of, "I worked really hard for this and it's not easy. I would have liked to hear something more supportive from you, especially since you're my friend." She also said that she felt like I was being dismissive of her accomplishment. I've been feeling kind of guilty since then because I really do care about her and her happiness, but at the same time, I didn't want to make a big deal about it or act fake just because she was expecting a compliment. I genuinely don't know how to handle these situations. It feels awkward for me to comment on someone's appearance, even if it's in a positive way. I feel like she knows I care about her and her well-being, so I didn't think a compliment about her weight loss was necessary to show my support. Now, I'm wondering if I really messed up. Did I do something wrong by not complimenting her weight loss? Should I have said more or been more enthusiastic? I feel like this is a sensitive topic for a lot of people, and I just didn't want to step into a conversation about body image in a way that might have felt disingenuous or awkward. So, am I the a-hole for not complimenting my friend's weight loss? Should I have been more supportive in my response, or was I justified in not making a big deal about it?